Imagine this. It's 3 a.m. The house is dead silent, but your mind is screaming. You're staring at the ceiling, sheets soaked in a cold sweat, and your heart is hammering against your ribs like it's trying to break out. You're not thinking about the millions in revenue you just closed or the accolades in the press. No, you're wondering if payroll is going to clear next Tuesday. You're running the math over and over, and it doesn't add up. Ben Horowitz calls this the struggle. It's that visceral, gut-wrenching place where the dream you sold everyone, your investors, your employees, your family, starts to feel a lot like a nightmare. And here is the question I want you to sit with for a second. Have you ever felt like you are drowning in your own success?
Because if you have, you know exactly what Horowitz is talking about. It's the loneliness of leadership. It's that creeping suspicion that everyone else in the valley, or on Wall Street, or even the competitor down the block, has it all figured out. You look at them and think, they know what they're doing. Why don't I? You feel like a fraud. You feel like the only person who doesn't have the map. Horowitz paints this picture that I think resonates with anyone who has ever been in charge of anything substantial. Imagine you are the captain of a massive ship. You're in the middle of a violent storm. The waves are crashing over the deck, the wind is howling, and the entire crew is looking at you, waiting for a command. They need you to tell them where to go. They need certainty.
But when you look out at the horizon, you don't see land. You don't see a lighthouse. All you see is fog, just thick gray fog. That is the burden of the CEO. That is the hard thing about hard things. There is no recipe. There is no manual for navigating that fog. And yet we treat leadership books like cookbooks, as if you can just follow a 3-step process to survive a crisis. Horowitz throws that idea right out the window. He says the only way out is through. So how did a guy who started out as a software engineer end up becoming the go-to crisis manager for Silicon Valley? To understand the struggle, we have to go back to the beginning, to a company called LoudCloud, and a market crash that almost ended it all before it even really began.
You are listening to The Last Read, books for your ears, wisdom for your life. I am truly glad you're here with us today. Most of the time, when we pick up a business book, we are looking for a roadmap to success, a step-by-step guide to the top. But today is a little different. Today isn't about how to succeed. It's about how not to die when everything around you is falling apart. In this episode, we are going to uncover the secrets of the Wartime CEO, a distinct breed of leader required when a company faces an existential threat. We aren't just talking about profit margins here. We are talking about the gut-wrenching reality of leadership. We will discuss the things polite society ignores, like how to fire your best friend without ruining the company, or how to deliver bad news when there is absolutely no good news to cushion the blow. If you want to ensure you have the tools to survive your hardest days, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss this toolkit. And as always, if you want to read along or keep this manual on your desk for your own crises, the link to the book is right there in the description. If you want to ensure you have the tools to survive your hardest days, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. You don't want to miss this toolkit. And as always, if you want to read along or keep this manual on your desk for your own crises, the link to the book is right there in the description.
You see, the man behind the manual is Ben Horowitz. Today, he's known as one of the power brokers of Silicon Valley, the co-founder of the legendary venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, or A16Z, as it's known in the tech world. But before he was writing checks to the next big unicorn, he was in the trenches. He cut his teeth at Netscape during the browser wars and later served as the CEO of Opsware, a company he had to fight tooth and nail to save after the dot-com bubble burst and his stock price cratered to 35 cents a share.
He brings that same raw, unpolished energy to the page. You open a chapter expecting a dry flowchart on corporate synergy, and instead, you're hit with lyrics from Nas, Jay-Z, or Kanye West. He quotes rap legends because he believes the hustle and the visceral reality of hip-hop culture often mirror the brutal truth of entrepreneurship better than any MBA textbook ever could. Ben wrote this book for a very specific reason. He was tired of management books lying to him. He realized that the vast majority of business literature is written by consultants who study successful companies during peacetime. They tell you how to set big, hairy, audacious goals. They tell you how to foster a perfect culture, and they tell you how to prevent problems before they start.
But, as Ben points out, those books are useless when the house is already on fire. They don't tell you what to do when you're out of cash, your product is failing, and your best employees are quitting. They don't tell you how to lead when you aren't sleeping because the dream has turned into a nightmare. As he famously says, a wartime CEO is too busy fighting the enemy to read management books written by consultants who have never managed a fruit stand. That terrifying state, that abyss where you feel like the walls are closing in, is what Ben simply calls the struggle. And if you think you're alone in that darkness, or that you've done something wrong to end up there, you really need to hear what comes next.
So, let's talk about that darkness. Ben Horowitz calls it simply the struggle, but for anyone who has lived through it, that name almost feels too polite. It feels more like a physiological condition than a business problem. It's that precise moment when the optimistic dream you sold to investors, to your employees, and even to your own family suddenly turns into a nightmare, and the terrifying realization hits you that you are the one driving the bus. It is important to understand that this isn't just about having a bad quarter or missing a sales target. The struggle is existential. It is waking up in a cold sweat at 3 a.m., realizing that cash flow is drying up and you have absolutely no idea how to make payroll. Horowitz describes it perfectly. He says the struggle is when you wonder why you started the company in the first place. It's when people ask you why you don't just quit, and you honestly don't know the answer.
We have seen this play out on a massive scale in the US economy. Think back to the dot-com bubble bursting in the early 2000s, or the financial crisis of 2008. Ben lived this reality vividly with his company, LoudCloud. He watched his stock drop from $6 to 35 cents. He saw customers go bankrupt, and he saw the market turn completely hostile. That is the struggle. It is looking at a balance sheet that is bleeding out and realizing there is no safety net. Now, when you are in that abyss, the natural human reaction is panic. It is paralysis. But Ben offers a brilliant analogy here, drawn from the world of auto racing, to explain how you survive it. He talks about the training for Formula One drivers. When a driver is taking a curve at 200 miles per hour and starts to spin out, their biological instinct screams at them to look at the wall. It's fear. You stare at the concrete barrier you are about to smash into. But the rule of racing is simple. If you stare at the wall, you will hit the wall. To survive, the driver must fight every natural instinct they have, force their head to turn, and look at the track. You have to focus entirely on where you want to go, not on what you are afraid of hitting. That is the essence of managing the struggle. You cannot obsess over the failure. You have to focus on the one path, however narrow, that gets you out. And here is the hard truth. The struggle is where greatness is forged. It is easy to be a CEO during a bull market when capital is cheap and everyone is growing. That doesn't take genius. That takes a rising tide. But greatness? That comes from the ability to suppress the urge to scream, to ignore the wall, and to find a way to win when there is absolutely no reason to believe you can. But to navigate that kind of chaos, to steer away from the wall when everyone else is bracing for impact, requires a very specific mindset. You cannot lead the same way you do when business is booming. In fact, Ben argues that the type of CEO required to build a company is often completely different from the type of CEO required to save it. It brings us to a critical distinction, a mental model that divides leaders into two very distinct camps, depending on whether they are standing on the deck of a cruise ship or in a trench.
This is the concept of the peacetime CEO versus the wartime CEO, and it is arguably the most famous mental model to come out of Horowitz's work. It challenges the very foundation of traditional management theory, because nearly all management books are written for peacetime. Let's define the terrain. In peacetime, a company has a large advantage over the competition in its core market, and the market is growing. In times like these, the company can focus on expanding the market and reinforcing the company's strengths. The peacetime CEO can afford to focus on culture, on fostering creativity, and on big, hairy, audacious goals. Think of Google in its golden era under Eric Schmidt. They had a stranglehold on search, margins were high, and the cash flow was endless. In that environment, you can afford to let engineers spend 20% of their time on personal projects. You can offer free gourmet food, and you can prioritize consensus building. It is like being the captain of a luxury cruise ship in the Caribbean. Your job is to keep the passengers happy and the ship moving smoothly toward the horizon. But wartime is different. In wartime, a company is fending off an imminent existential threat. Such a threat can come from intense competition, a dramatic macroeconomic change, or a self-inflicted wound that threatens to bleed the company dry. The wartime CEO does not have the luxury of consensus. The wartime CEO cares only about one thing: survival. Horowitz uses a powerful comparison here involving Steve Jobs. When Jobs returned to Apple in the late 90s, the company was weeks away from bankruptcy. He didn't come in and hold a retreat to discuss corporate values. He went into full wartime mode. He cut product lines, he slashed inventory, he demanded absolute compliance. He wasn't trying to make Apple a nice place to work, he was trying to stop the ship from sinking. Ben puts it brilliantly when he says, "Peacetime CEO knows that protocol leads to success. Wartime CEO violates protocol in order to win."
The peacetime CEO strives to tolerate deviations from the plan to encourage innovation. The wartime CEO is completely intolerant of deviation because a single mistake could kill the company. The peacetime CEO builds a recruiting machine. The wartime CEO knows that sometimes you have to fight the war with the soldiers you have, or ruthlessly upgrade the unit while under fire. So the question you have to ask yourself right now is, which one are you? And more importantly, which one does your company need? Because the skills required for one do not translate to the other. A peacetime CEO acting like a dictator during the good times will crush the culture and drive away talent. But a wartime CEO trying to be a Democrat when the building is on fire, well, everyone burns. Understanding this mode is crucial because it dictates how you handle the most painful aspects of the job. When you are in the trenches, when survival is the only metric that matters, you are often forced to make decisions that feel unnatural and, frankly, heartbreaking. And there is no decision more heartbreaking or more difficult for a leader to execute than the act of removing people from the organization. It is the grim reality of wartime, and it requires a specific kind of courage to do it right.
And that courage starts with recognizing that when you fire an executive, you aren't just removing a person, you are admitting a failure. And usually, it's your failure. Ben Horowitz is brutally honest about this. He says that when you have to fire an executive, the first step is a root cause analysis, and 9 times out of 10, the root cause is looking back at you in the mirror. You hired for lack of weakness rather than for strength, or you hired for scale before you were ready. So when you walk into that room, you cannot go in with a laundry list of their mistakes. You have to own it. You have to say, this is not working, and that is my fault, because I hired you for a role that, frankly, doesn't exist anymore. Now, how do you actually say the words? In corporate America, we are obsessed with being nice. We are trained to use the famous compliment sandwich. You know the drill. You say something nice, then you slip in the bad news, and then you finish with something nice. You're a great guy, Bob. You're fired. But hey, love that tie.
Horowitz absolutely hates this. In a wartime scenario, the compliment sandwich is not just ineffective, it is cruel. It is confusing. It sends mixed messages when clarity is the only thing that matters. You cannot sandwich a termination. Instead, you have to treat it like pulling off a Band-Aid. If you do it slowly, if you waffle or hesitate, it hurts infinitely more. You have to be incredibly fast and incredibly clear. The decision is made. It is non-negotiable. But, and this is the most critical part, you must preserve their dignity. Ben quotes the legendary Silicon Valley coach Bill Campbell on this. Bill used to say, "You have to take their job, but you do not have to take their dignity. Let them walk out the door with their head up. If you humiliate them, if you badmouth them on the way out, you are sending a signal to everyone who stays that this is how you treat people." And that brings us to the darkest day for any CEO: layoffs. Firing one person is hard. Firing 100 people is a trauma. And the biggest mistake CEOs make during a layoff is focusing all their emotional energy on the people leaving.
Now, that sounds cold, right? You should care about the people leaving. But Horowitz argues that the most important performance of your life is the speech you give to the people who stay, the survivors. They are sitting there, looking at the empty desks, wondering, is the ship sinking? Am I next? If you try to hide the bad news, or if you blame the market, or if you apologize too much, you lose them. You have to stand up there and say, we failed. I failed. We lost the initiative, and in order to win, we have to endure this pain. You have to acknowledge the friends who just left, but you have to immediately focus the survivors on the mission ahead. Because if you lose the people remaining in the building, the company is dead anyway. It really comes down to a strict hierarchy of priorities. There is a specific order to how you must treat your organization if you want to survive. It's a 3-part framework, and if you get the order wrong, the math simply doesn't work. But most leaders, especially in the short term, they get it completely backward. Ben Horowitz borrows a mantra from his old boss at Netscape, Jim Barksdale, that explains this perfectly. We take care of the people, the products, and the profits in that order. In that order. It sounds simple, maybe even a little cliché, but the logic is ironclad. If you don't take care of your people, they won't build a great product. And if you don't have a great product, you will never see a dime of profit. The problem is that taking care of people is the hardest one on the list. It's messy, it's emotional, and because it's hard, many leaders try to take shortcuts. Horowitz calls this management debt. It works exactly like technical debt in engineering or credit card debt in your personal life. You make an easy, short-term decision today to avoid immediate pain, but you end up paying for it later with interest. And the interest rate on management debt is incredibly high.
Let's say you have 2 talented executives who both want the same promotion. You don't want to upset either of them, so you decide to make them co-heads of the department. You put 2 in the box. Problem solved, right? You avoided the conflict. You kept the peace. But you just swiped the management credit card. Because now, nobody knows who makes the final call. Decision-making slows to a crawl. Politics creep in because the team doesn't know which parent to please. Eventually, the performance suffers, the product suffers, and you have to fire one or both of them anyway to clean up the mess. You traded a moment of awkwardness today for a catastrophe next year. This is why Horowitz is so adamant that a CEO must tell it like it is. You cannot hide bad news. He compares a good corporate culture to a network routing protocol, specifically one where bad news travels fast. If you are a leader, you want the bad news to sprint to your desk. You want to know immediately if the product is failing or if a competitor is eating your lunch. If you punish people for bringing you problems, or if you try to sugarcoat the reality, the bad news stays buried. It festers. And by the time it finally reaches you, it's usually too late to fix. So you have to strip away the optimism. You have to stop borrowing against the future to make the present feel better. You have to prioritize the people by being honest with them, even when it hurts. But here is the catch. Being the person who has to absorb all that bad news, the person who has to constantly pay down that debt and deliver the hard truths, that does something to you. It creates a unique kind of psychological torture that only a CEO really understands. And that internal battle, the war that takes place entirely inside your own head, is arguably the hardest thing of all.
Ben Horowitz calls this the struggle. It's not just stress, it's a physical condition. The struggle is when you wonder why you started the company in the first place. It's when people ask you why you don't quit, and you don't know the answer. It's when food loses its taste. It's when you wake up in a cold sweat, staring at the ceiling, convinced that you are an idiot, but nobody will fire you. And the worst part? It is all your fault. If you hire a sales VP and they fail, that's your fault for hiring them. If the product slips, your fault for not managing the timeline. If the market crashes, your fault for not predicting it. When you are the CEO, you don't get to blame anyone else. You are the final stop. And that weight can crush you if you let it. So, how do you survive the war inside your own head? Horowitz suggests a mental exercise, a sort of corporate Freaky Friday.
He points to a legendary moment in tech history involving Andy Grove and Gordon Moore at Intel. In the mid-'80s, Intel was getting crushed by Japanese competitors in the memory chip business. The company was bleeding money. Grove and Moore were paralyzed, debating what to do. Finally, Andy Grove looked at Moore and asked a simple question. If we got kicked out and the board brought in a new CEO, what do you think he would do? Moore didn't hesitate. He said he would get us out of memories. Grove stared at him and said, "Why shouldn't you and I walk out the door, come back in, and do it ourselves?" That is the technique. You have to fire yourself in your own head. You have to detach your ego from your past decisions. The new CEO doesn't care about the legacy products you love. They don't care about the awkwardness of shutting down a division you started. They just look at the data and make the right move. But to do that, you have to stop lying to yourself. And that is harder than it sounds. As a leader, you spend all day selling your vision to investors, to employees, to customers. You have to be optimistic, but you cannot believe your own press release.
You have to look at the terrifying reality and not blink. And this brings us to the final piece of the internal battle, the loneliness. You can't vent to your employees. If you tell them you're terrified the company will fail, they'll quit. You can't vent to your board. If you tell them you have no idea what you're doing, they'll fire you. It is lonely at the top. Horowitz says you need a network, not just friends, but peers, people who have sat in the chair. He says you need two kinds of friends, the kind you call when you win, who will be genuinely happy for you, and the kind you call when your life is on the line and you only have one phone call. You need to find those people, because if you try to carry the weight of the struggle entirely on your own shoulders, you will break. But even with a network, even with the right mindset, you might still be looking for the formula. You might be waiting for me to tell you the secret recipe for fixing everything. Well, here is the hard truth about that.